WNS, as I expand the conversation beyond sticking to sports around here, books come to me, and, when a book has a foreword written by Malcolm Gladwell, it's probably something I'm going to dig. I've read a lot of Gladwell stuff. I follow him, and this is sort of my pursuit to find bigger, better, faster. The book is called Endure, and it's the mind, body, and the curiously elastic limits of human performance. The book is brand new. The author is Alex Hutchinson. He is from Toronto, Canada, north of the border. Is going to give me shelter when it all breaks down here, because Geddy Lee is there, and any country that has Geddy Lee is a good place to be. Alex, welcome in, man. Congratulations on getting a book done. I've done a couple of them, and whenever they're finished and you get to do this part and hurt your arm autographing them, then you get to talk about it, and I think that's the cool part. This is an interesting topic you've taken on as a Ph.D., sir.
Thank you very much, Nestor. It's great to be here, and you're right. It was a long time sitting in front of my computer writing it, so it's nice to be out in the world talking about it now.
Well, the first thing I always ask is, as an author of a book, your idea, and look, you've done a lot of different stuff. I mean, you're all over the Globe and Mail. You write Jockology. We've seen. I know you're a runner, and you're very much into all of that. But putting a book together and an idea and getting it soup to nuts finished, what were you trying to accomplish? What were you trying to prove or disprove? I know you smart guys always have some sort of thesis in there somewhere, right?
Well, you could probably psychoanalyze me and take it right back to I was a college track and field runner, ran for the Canadian national team for a while, and anyone who kind of dreams big but eventually has to walk away from the sport without ever, setting a world record or going to the Olympics, you always kind of wonder, did I get everything out of myself? Did I reach my physical limits? Or did I leave something on the table because I wasn't, tough enough or whatever the case may be? So I've always kind of wondered what defines our physical limits. How do we know when we've reached our physical limits? And if so, can we change them? So I've been wondering about that for a long time, and eventually I ended up about 10 years ago kind of starting to make that my thing, journalistically, writing about not who's winning and losing the games, but why and how. And that ended up becoming a book on what are the limits of endurance.
Well, and I think the other part of athletic pursuits when you win is when they say mental toughness, and always the give 101%, right? Like how that edge happens. And look, dude, I don't want to be cynical here or be that guy in America that is cynical, but I've been doing this for a living as well for 34 years, 27 years on the radio. I was in those locker rooms when Brady Anderson hit 50 home runs, and he'll still look you in the eye and swear to God it was the Wheaties. And then there's the whole Mark McGwire. Any baseball fan. I'm a baseball city. You're in a baseball city in Toronto as well. But the kinds of scandal we had here on the baseball side of things would open up. But, on the Olympic stage, every time it comes around, I start to scratch and itch about who the new Barry Bonds. Monday morning, I wake up, there's a Russian curler, right? These athletes who all got banned for doping, the entire country had its flag for doping, and that's just the election down here, let alone the Olympics, and they're doping and curling, Alex. Everybody needs an edge, right? And this is what's not cheating unless you get caught, and if you're not cheating, you're not trying, right?
Yeah, well, certainly it kind of opens my eyes to realize that even the curlers are trying to enhance their endurance, and it tells you that, to me, it's endurance. In the book, I ended up defining endurance as the struggle to continue against a mounting desire to stop, because it's kind of hard. You have to come up with some definition, and the thing is, endurance isn't just about what you're doing when you're running a marathon. It's the same thing if you're doing your taxes, or you're at work for a full day, or apparently if you're curling, if you're throwing rocks down a rink. Your muscles may be okay, but the mental focus that it takes to win, in any athletic contest, it starts to run out after a while. And curling, it takes endurance to watch curling, as far as I'm concerned. But
I see people play pickup basketball at the gym that would kill each other, literally, more than the NBA players look like they're putting in an effort. But everybody, so even if you're the weekend warrior, you sort of feel like you know where your edge is or what you're capable of doing. I turned 50 this year. I'm in the best shape of my life, right? Like, I get on a hot yoga mat 3-4 days a week. I'm literally at my ideal way. It's kind of happened accidentally because I just sort of dig it. And if you don't find something you love to do, you're probably will never stretch yourself, whether it's basketball, skiing, whatever that thing is for you that is your Jones. If you get on a bike or a recumbent bike, or you like a stair step, whatever your Jones is, you always are trying to measure yourself, right? If you ever did anything competitive at all, you sort of know your time or how fast you're going, right? Well, we all have the little stopwatches now that give us everything, right?
Yeah, I think this gets at something really deep in human nature. It's like, because you got to ask, like, I think there were something like 17 million people who ran a road race in the U.S. last year. It's like,
Wow.
16.99 million of those people were not trying to go to the Olympics. It's something personal. We all kind of like to figure out, where's my limit? How far can I push? And we push in different ways and in different respects. But yeah, I do think it's something that's really universal, and it's got to be hardwired into us somehow. Because otherwise there's no reason why. Like you said, you go to the local basketball court down the street from me, and yeah, guys are just banging away against each other. They want to find out how good they can be and how far they can go, even if they're never going to make a living at it or anything like that.
Isn't that part of all of this? So maybe even in the Olympics, is like, I see these people come down these half pipes, and I'm thinking to myself, my God, like, who did that the first time? Whose idea was that, to go up in the air and go spin around and try to land on your feet, off an ice cliff? And then there's other stuff like just running. Like, my wife and I had at one point interviewed Sir Roger Bannister at a Sports Illustrated event 20 years ago. First human being to run under 4-minute mile. And this happens back in the 40s and 50s and 60s. You're not thinking so much about doping, but I've been on the planet since 68, going back to East Germany and the Russians, them still getting banned 50 years later. Where do you stand on that part of this? Because there is an edge to what you can do eating apples and peaches and mixing in milkshakes and protein shakes and various vitamins and supplements and all of that stuff that's sort of below the bar. And then there's what you can't do in the Olympics or the NFL or baseball or, wherever they measure stuff like that. And then there's what you could just do if you were just trying to, for whatever reason, not compete or make money, but just sort of to look good at a competition. There's all sorts of things that can chemically enhance all of that at this point. Where do you stand on where that becomes good or bad? I mean, everyone would have a judgment on what they would or wouldn't put in their own body, right? Or what they would want for their children.
Yeah, so let me. Here's my war story. Is I competed a couple of decades ago at the World Cross Country Championships, and I came something like 106th or something like that. I was not. There were no articles written about me, but the guy who came 105th, I kept an eye on him, and the next year he suddenly became really good. He got way faster. He was from Ireland. He set a bunch of national records. Went to the Olympics. And I was thinking, man, I was only like a second behind that guy. I could be that guy. And then he got popped for doping 2 years later, and I was so this guy's as good as me. He took some drugs, and then he got to go to the Olympics and become famous. So that sort of, made me think about things, and made me think, well, what do these things mean to me? What would it take for me to do that? And look,
man, it made every backup infielder in Major League Baseball feel the same way, right? It made every fifth starter feel like he could be a first starter. I mean, I watched it. I watched guys get rich. We guys watched guys' foreheads grow 3 inches. You know what I mean? Sammy Sosa became a Caucasian. It's amazing, what happened in the aftermath of all of it. But then, Lance Armstrong, right? I mean, travels around the world, gets the pretty girl, right? Beats the cancer and all that, and we find out, he was a sewer of, in the end. And so is his reputation, even after saving lives, with these great causes. There's a real shame in it. But when you're on top of the mountain and you're cheating and you're winning, I don't know that it really matters what happens when you fall down the mountain, because to your point, at least he got to be on the mountain at one point, right? But I guess if his pancreas falls out in 12 years, then, we have a whole different issue, right?
Yeah, and it would be interesting to say, okay, if you had a time machine, Lance, would you do it all the same way again? And it's hard to imagine that he wouldn't do it all the same way, right? Like he had a pretty great life, and he still has a pretty great life, even if a lot of people think he's a bit of a douche. But look, I understand the human motivations, and I totally see how it goes. I do think, though, like we were saying before, you want to figure out where your limits are. Well, at a certain point, if I wanted to run a marathon really fast, I could get on a motorcycle, but it wouldn't have any meaning to me to have done it on a motorcycle. So you kind of, at a certain point, if you're short-circuiting it, I think you do it for the riches if that's what you're into, but you don't. I think you lose some of the actual intrinsic satisfaction of finding out whether you can push your limits if you just sort of short circuit them.
Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety, Alex Hutchinson is my guest from Toronto, Canada. I'm not going to say A to you because I love Toronto. I have too much respect for Geddy Lee and for all of your people and singing O Canada. The book is Endure, Mind, Body, and the Curiously Elastic Limits of Human Performance. He started out as a physicist with a Ph.D. from the University of Cambridge, then a few years as a postdoctoral researcher with the U.S. National Security Agency working on quantum computing and nanomechanics. That was my old job. He is Alex Hutchinson. So the book, and you have an idea and a seed for this. Obviously, the words Malcolm and Gladwell pop off, who's another one of your countrymen there as well. And some thoughts about when I picked this book up, am I reading The Tipping Point? Am I reading something that is in that sort of vein or in that sort of style in any way?
A little bit. I think, look, every author would like to say they're doing something like Malcolm Gladwell does.
Right, exactly. My stuff's Steve Russian, trust me, but it's not. It's not at all.
The idea here is to look at some of the science and but also to tell some of the stories about endurance and see what we can learn. And I think, again, hopefully like a Malcolm Gladwell book, you come away with a different perspective on what physical limits are. And I think the key point you come away with is that a lot of the limits we perceive as physical are actually controlled by the brain, and so they're negotiable. We can change them in certain ways. So I hope that's the kind of broad takeaway that you get from a Malcolm Gladwell book, but that you can maybe also take from this one.
Well, I'm a guy that's done like about a half dozen firewalks with Tony Robbins, so I'm kind of open-minded to that. I guess my filthy journalist, sports guy, baseball, American, Olympic watching sports mind says, all right, there's the edge of what I can do, and then if I could take that pill or take that hit or take that bump or get that needle or have that supplement that I could do more. I think that's only sort of the next natural thing to say, well, that's where the edge is. Where is the edge with the mind at this point? I remember back in my college days in the late 80s, I had a logic course. I had to write a term paper thesis. Certainly not on your level, bro. But I wrote it on hypnosis in sports at that point because there were some athletes that were, and I guess at this point we would call it visualization, right? Like a lot of athletes. I mean, Nick Foles talked about it 2 weeks ago on the podium in Minnesota when I was there freezing. That you visualize what's going to happen. I've seen it a lot in the Olympics this week. Visualizing my routine. I hear that. That's a big part of how it's coached now, is that we've all come to realize, and from Phil Jackson and the Zen of all of it, there's luck, there's all of that, but there's really seeing it before it happens and playing for success, playing to get to walk on the fire barefoot and seeing yourself on the other side, which I've done a handful of times.
Yeah, totally. And what's interesting to me is look, so when I was in college 20 years ago running for the track team, we had a sports psychologist working with us, teaching us about positive motivation and
sure.
Negative thought stopping.
I think I can.
Yeah, and we thought it was the biggest joke. We just thought, lady, just back off. We're serious runners here. We're working on our VO2 max and our lactate threshold. We thought it was silly. And so one of the things that I've realized is there's a long history of people sort of feeling their way towards how do we push our mental limits back. And some of what they came up with is garbage, and some of it is gold. And so what the science is now doing is helping us to figure out which of these techniques, like motivational self-talk and visualization, really have some power, and which of them may have been kind of false alleyways. But it's definitely it's totally in keeping with in a sense. And some of the scientists I talked to said this. They said, look, the greatest coaches and the greatest athletes are 50 years ahead of us. And we're not going to be able to teach the best athletes in the world how to do better. What we can maybe do is help the rest of us be a little bit more like those all-time greats who've already figured it out on their own.
You said some of it's gold. What part's gold? Like, give me a story of something that was an aha moment for you in putting this book together, or something that was essential that you're like, here's the best story of something that you thought was hoo-ha as you Mr. Ph.D., but maybe 20 years ago they thought it was hoo-ha. Now it's not hoo-ha. It's something that you feel is factual.
Well, let me just start by saying that the thing that surprised me most in the book, so I was looking at various physical limits. When are we limited by oxygen? When are we limited by heat? When are we limited by fuel? And looking at the oxygen stuff, I was like, well, what's the longest someone can hold their breath?
Wow. Okay. So like Houdini type stuff, kind of, sort of?
Yeah, with no tricks. So David Blaine did it a while ago with like inhaling pure oxygen beforehand, and that's kind of a trick. It extends it a lot. But you're just no trickery. You just hold your breath and boom. How long can you do it for? And it totally blew my mind that people can hold their breath. The record is 11 minutes and 35 seconds. And what's interesting, though, is that the people who do this, they're usually free divers. They hit the same physical. So I'd hit my limits maybe at a minute and a half, 2 minutes. Trained free divers will hit what seems to be their limits at maybe 4 minutes.
Where would Michael Phelps be on this? Like when I think of dolphins and fish, I think, literally, I think of a guy like him. Where would he be on that?
I don't think he'd be all that good. He'd be lucky to be at 3 or 4 minutes because that's when everyone hits this limit that's determined not by your lack of oxygen, but because your carbon dioxide levels are too high. So you think it's your limit. And what the people who have specifically trained to hold their breath, what they can do, it's not because they have bigger lungs. They've just learned to ignore the warning signal that says you're out of oxygen and wait until they actually are out of oxygen. It turns out it's twice as long or more than twice as long between what you feel is your limit and what your actual limit is. And so to me, that's like a crystal clear example of something where it's like nothing feels more like a real limit than running out of oxygen if you're holding your breath. But if you're trained for it, you can just ignore that feeling and go to your actual physical limit. So I think that's kind of a broad thing to remember, that it's like it may feel like a physical limit, but there's actually more reserve in the tank there.
Hey, I appreciate you making a little bit of time and coming on with us here. The book is Endure, Mind, Body, and the Curiously Elastic Limits of Human Performance. You can find Alex Hutchinson out at alexhutchinson.net. You also do some writing up there in Toronto, right? What the heck is Jockology? Tell me about that.
So it's a biweekly column that's basically looking at the science of exercise and fitness. The idea that's been going for 10 years now, it's in the Globe and Mail, which is our national newspaper here, and the idea is take all the questions that we have and where your personal trainer has opinions and advice, or your buddy at the gym has advice, and just call up some scientists and say, what do we actually know about whether you should do your strength training before your cardio, or whether you should stretch before exercise, and all this sort of stuff. Let's just figure out what we actually know, which sometimes isn't very much, but at least we know the difference between rumors and science.
He is, speaking of science, he's also a fun follow out on Twitter at Sweat Science, correct? Not the sweet science, the Sweat Science, outside Sweat Science columnist. Endure, Mind, Body, and the Curiously Elastic Limits of Human Performance, now available. Hey, man, next time I'm in Toronto, or TO as y'all call it up there, I was up there for like 4 days during the Maple Leafs and the Caps last year. I have been known to sneak in for a Jays game or 3. A good town you have up there. Don't let anybody wreck it, all right?
Thank you. We'll keep it as the friendly, apologizing town that it is.
Well, you mean sorry?
Yeah. We'll say sorry every time if we bump into you. Even if you knock us over, we'll say sorry to you. That's the kind of town.
Well, I'm sorry I didn't reach to you last year because you'd probably be fun at a hockey game explaining it all to me. Alex, great having you on, my brother. Good luck with your book, man. I love the deep thinking, and I'm going to take a deep dive in. This is it's right up my alley. I appreciate your time today.
Thanks so much, Nestor. It's been fun to chat.
You got it. Alex Hutchinson, Sweat Science, out on Twitter, and the book is Endure, Mind, Body, and the Curiously Elastic Limits of Human Performance. Endorsed by the great Malcolm Gladwell, who says, this book is amazing. Maybe Alex can get Malcolm on the show. We can talk about, football or something. You can find me out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device. By downloading the TuneIn Radio app, we do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. The morning newspaper ships directly to your email inbox each and every morning at 7 a.m. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life. Breaking news. I've been kidding about the Manny Machado dealing. Who knows? It's the Orioles. Anything's possible, man. They might even sign a 4th pitcher before it's all over with. You'll get it first in the WNST Tech Service. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. I want to remind everybody to get out to Rofo, download that app, use that when you buy your gas, and you're going to get fries and my favorite Western fries, the fried chicken, free of charge as well as maybe ice cream, late night run, whatever you're into. Rofo's around the corner, real fresh, real fast, and the Rofo app is there, and I'm using it. You need to use it too. Also brought to you by our friends at Howard Bank. I am wearing my Howard Bank hat. They're putting locations everywhere. You're going to be hearing more about them around here. I don't have my coffee cup, but I'm mixing and matching all of my fun new sponsor stuff. We are very, very appreciative of everyone joining us, whether it's a Rob Halford interview or talking baseball and football with Luke or moving around talking cool things like an endurance book with Alex Hutchinson. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, and all of our work is out on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook Live, as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.